Maine Speaker Series of 2024. This is the fourth session of four that we're going to be hosting this year. Tonight's presenter has been a member of Board 95 in Lowell, Massachusetts since 1989. He's officiated three MIAA Massachusetts State Boys Finals, seven New England Prep State Championships, and three National Prep School Championships. He's also officiated NCAA Division II and Division III levels, including five times being part of the NCAA Division III NCAA tournament. He's been a board interpreter of Board 95 since 2014, and he is a core presenter at the IBO Fall Conference. He is assistant chair of the IBO Life Membership Committee, and he is also one of the strongest officials we've had in New England for some time. It is a great pleasure to have Mr. John Rafferty join us this evening. John?
Thank you very much, TJ. And it's a pleasure to be in Maine, in Board 95 in Lowell, Massachusetts. Some of you in Southern Maine probably know where Lowell is, but I am just a little bit less than an hour from Maine. I actually spend a lot of time there for my regular job. I work on natural gas pipelines, and going back until the early 90s, I've spent a lot of time all over the state of Maine, all the way up to Bangor and Baileyville and out to Sunday River area, and a lot of time in Portland, Lewiston, Auburn, and I've been very blessed to come up and speak to you folks a couple times. And from an IBO perspective, as a general member, you come in, you pass your test, you go to your meetings, you want to do your games, you want to do your very best. And I know everybody on this call wants to do their very best, because why would anybody be dialing in on Sunday night to hear me talk if they didn't want to do their best? But you in Maine are so blessed from a basketball perspective. There's a royal lineage, and it's really an honor for me to be a very small part of it and speak to you tonight. Peter Webb, who is the interpreter of all interpreters, his legacy, and TJ Halliday gets to fall in his footsteps. TJ has brought a whole new, just a whole new perspective to teaching and training and the text and all the things we do. And then Julie Goupel, who is so talented with the presentations and the way everything is presented. I mean, IBO is a very small nonprofit corporation. We look like a Fortune 100 company, and it's largely because of what Julie puts on paper. So it's a real honor to follow and just be a very small part of the legacy you have in Maine and how much Maine touches high school basketball. It's absolutely incredible. And I could go on and on about the folks I've got to work with collegiately and the prep school wise in Maine, and so many good friends. Barry Fuller, all he's brought to it. So thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to spending the next hour with you, and have a wonderful season. So if you have any questions, please shoot them to TJ in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer the questions at the end. Tonight we're going to talk about coach communications and warnings. And, this is not necessarily something you're going to find in the 10 rules from the National Federation. There's a lot on this in Casebook. There's a lot on this in our manual, but there is some artistry to this. And I hope tonight that we can bring some practical examples on how to communicate with coaches and use the warnings that are available to us in the rule set. And so with that, let's begin the presentation. I always like to start with acknowledgments, and I gave a bunch to Maine. But if you get nothing from tonight, if there's some real new or younger members, I want you to remember one thing, and that's mentorship. If you want to be the very best freshman official there is, and that's all you ever want to do, or the best 5th and 6th grade travel official, I want you to find a mentor at that level. And if you want to go on and do the NBA, I hope you make it. And I want you to find a mentor at that level. I was blessed to have a number of mentors and a number of people that helped put this presentation together. In fact, a lot of presenters from IBO that I cut and paste various pieces of this presentation. So as Felix Adeo, our executive director, always says, if you take one source and you use it, that's plagiarism. If you use multiple sources, you're doing research. So there's been a lot of research in this presentation. Robert Alston, Rich Antonetti, Joanne Aldrich, TJ himself. All the presentations that I show here are derived from those presenters. Larry Kavanaugh Sr. was my mentor. He was an inaugural Big East official. He worked Division I television every night, and he was my interpreter. Larger than life. I got in the 70-year history of Board 95. He was the second interpreter. I got to follow in these giant footsteps and be the third interpreter. And I have a lot of scars on my back from following him. I got to be his assistant for a long time. He passed in 2017, but he is just larger than life. That game he's refereeing right there is Cambridge Regional Latin. You might know the name Patrick Ewing. He's calling a foul where Patrick Ewing got fouled in that photo right there. Bill Boudelier, who's the state interpreter of Massachusetts, one of my mentors, and has helped me immensely. Bill has the rules memorized back to front, front to back, every casebook play, every rule. He has an absolute memory. And beyond that, he's a very practical official and a very wonderful person. And then Tommy Lopes, who was our former executive director, and Billy Martin, always gave great communications, presentations with coaches, and I adapt from them. So that's the acknowledgement. Let's get into the fun stuff. So look at this beautiful motivational poster. Effective teamwork begins and ends with communication. Coach K, right? Look at the beautiful championship ring, the Duke shirt, right? All the regalia. Nothing could be more beautiful than this, right? Until game time. And then we take the referee and we come into the game and we inject ourselves. And now the whole thing gets screwed up, right? And the one thing I want you to remember when you're communicating with coaches, players, when you go in and officiate a game, whether it's the junior high level or the high school level or the collegiate level, this is a family and you are injecting yourselves into that family. So they practice all week. They play 2-3 times a week. Okay. They might have dinners depending on the level that they're at. They might spend upwards of 40 hours a week together. At the high school level, they probably spend a good 20 hours a week together, maybe on bus rides, practice, homework sessions. It's probably 20 plus hours a week. So they are a family. They know all the problems about boyfriends, girlfriends, parents, bad grades, personal issues, right? They're all trying to win a basketball game as a family. And then we, as the strangers, come in and inject ourselves for 32 minutes of basketball and mess the whole thing up. So just remember that you are visiting a family and that you are in a family's home when you're in that gymnasium. And so you want to be the professional. You want to act courteous, just as if you were visiting somebody's home that maybe wasn't your closest friend, but somebody that was an acquaintance. And you want to use communication commensurate with that situation and setting. So let's talk about tools for effective communications. Communication, and this goes beyond basketball. It's anything. You need it to be successful in anything, really, whether it's your job, whether you're a teacher, even a student. You need to be a good communicator to be successful at most things. And it's a dynamic process. It's a two-way street, okay? Here we got one of my mentors, Jimmy Byrne, and he's in a state quarterfinal in Massachusetts here, and he's having communications with a legendary high school coach who's won a number of state championships. And that's a two-way process. It's not me or Jimmy, in this case, yelling at the head coach, not the head coach yelling at them. It's a dynamic two-way process that goes back and forth. It can have a positive outcome. It can have a negative outcome. Really, honestly, another takeaway I want you to have, it's up to you as the official, whether that becomes a positive or negative outcome. You're the professional in the game. You've been trained. You are the official that determines. You are the person in the relationship, largely, not in every case, that determines if it's a positive or a negative outcome. And effective communication can be instinctive, but it can be learned. I don't think I was the best communicator when I first started. Now, when I first started in the 80s, it was a very different mindset. You'd give out teas to head coaches, ejection to head coaches. There'd be cigars passed around, brandy passed around. It'd be Friday night. You'd be put on a pedestal. The tenor has changed, and we've become a much more professional group since the late 1980s. And so I had to learn a lot of the things I'm going to teach you tonight. How did I learn that? Go back to slide number 1, and that was mentorship and listening. And that's something I really encourage you to do at your local boards. Find somebody that you like, that you trust, is at the level you want to be good at, whatever that level is. And I applaud you. If it's YMCA games on Saturday morning, I want you to be the best at that because somebody's paying you to be there, and that's somebody's NBA. So, with that being said, let's look at what communication really is. Many different things. And I could ask all of you, if we were in person, I would ask you, and we could say, oh, it's social media, it's writing, it's reading, it's listening, it's text messages, it's phone calls, it's voicemails. And, it's really all the above. There's many different pieces to communications. But if we look in the dictionary, and we look at Webster, the definition says we're simply exchanging information. We're expressing thoughts, ideas of feelings. Do you think coaches are very emotional? Do you think they have feelings? Do you think they're passionate about the men and women that they're coaching and they spend 20 to 40 hours a week with? I think they probably are. So let's look at the cycle of communication. We send a message, it's encoded. The encoding might be verbal, it might be nonverbal. We're going to send that message, and then somebody's going to decode it and interpret it. And my wife and I have been married for 33 years, and I look at some of the worst arguments we ever had, not that we've had many, but some of the worst arguments we ever had because one of us sent a message and the other one completely misinterpreted it. And so this is like the best example is the telephone game. When you're in kindergarten, right? We whisper a message. I'm going to whisper it to Julie's ear. She's going to whisper it to Dan Nato, who's going to whisper it to TJ, who's going to whisper it to Keith Morse. And by the time I get through everybody that's on this call, the message is going to be completely different at the end. And so, fortunately, we don't have 65 people to communicate to. We're communicating directly with the head coach. But remember, to be effective, the message you send is what you want to be interpreted. So let's take a look at some ways we can do that. So here's just some things to think about with interpretation. 10% of conflict is due to difference in opinion, and 90% is due to the wrong tone of voice. It's not what you say, but it's how you say it. And, my entire family, as many New Englanders, many third, fourth generation New Englanders, came from the British Isles. All of my family came from County Mayo, Ireland. And so I like to talk about Irish diplomacy. It's the ability to tell someone to go to hell so they actually look forward to the trip. And if you can learn Irish diplomacy, you can probably be a pretty effective communicator on the basketball court as an official with coaches. So body language is a big part of this. If we had a little more time than tonight, we could get deeper into body language. But this starts when you walk in the door. Are you dressed properly? Are you carrying your bag? Are you smiling? You greet the AD or the site administrator like you're happy to be there? It's a mindset that starts right from the door. You've put in a 40, 50, 60-hour week. It's Friday night. You're going to refereeing. Are you exhausted? Have you had a fight with your significant other? Have your kids having problems? That's got to be checked at the door, and we've got to be the professional. It starts with your body language to walk in. If you're slumped over and you're another Friday night, why did they send me to Calais? Oh, what a ride. That's going to reflect in the way you communicate. That's going to reflect to everyone who's playing, coaching, observing, and the fans in general. You're going to get off on a bad foot. So remember, whether you think you are or not, you are being watched. And every game is videotaped down to the 5th grade level. I assign in Massachusetts. I assign high school and some other things. And the videos I get, you would not believe. So everybody's got a video right here. You've got one probably in front of you. And remember, you're always being watched. So your facial expressions, your gestures, your posture, they all come into play with that. So let's look at some barriers to effective communication. Judging the other person. Oh, this coach is an ass. Oh, we're going to have problems right off the bat. That's judgment. That's not going to work for us. Not paying attention to the person you are talking to. Coaches know if you're really listening to them, we're going to spend a lot of time on that tonight, using overly technical language. Okay. I've got by my bedside here the IVO manual. Okay. And I better know chapter and verse, but I don't necessarily need to cite chapter and verse. The coaches need paraphrasing, and we move on. Giving unwanted solution or advice. I'm going to talk a lot about this tonight, and avoiding the concerns of others. Who are the others in this case? Coaches. They're your customers. Let's look at, on the parallel, more than 5 things. Let's look at 9 things for effective communications. Active listening. Got to be a great listener to referee. Nonverbal communication. I'll give you the example. You make a call, you're opposite the table. Because of the rotation, you're going to stay opposite the table, and the coach wants to talk to you. You can shake your head and say, I'll be around, or I hear you. Very quick nonverbal communication. Sometimes that just puts the coach at ease right there. Like, hey, Raf's listening to me. Like, this, okay, good. And then you get over and talk to them when you get in front of them. Hey, you had a question about that travel I had? Yeah, it's gone. Don't worry about it. Your little nonverbal communications. Yep. Or I'll be around. You've diffused the situation many, many times. Asking questions. I'm going to get into some very specific examples of asking really good, effective questions to coaches. Being clear and succinct. Clarifying and summarizing. Being empathetic. Providing feedback. Developing trust and rapport. When you can develop trust and rapport with coaches at whatever level you're at, you know you've made it at that level. And then lastly, being present and engaged. That's what I talked about at the beginning of the slide on nonverbal communications. If you're present and engaged and you show up dressed well and smiling and happy to be there and ready to go, that's going to go a long way with your communication skills. So let's talk about communicating with the head coaches, and let's talk about some guidelines. And these are right out of our manual. Being able to effectively communicate with coaches and players obviously is critical to your success, because if you can't communicate and they don't want you there, enough coaches don't want you there, whatever level you're working, you're not coming back. And again, this is mostly learned techniques. There are some really naturally good communicators. I like to think myself as a good communicator, but I had to learn a lot of techniques to deal with coaches, especially in some of the very tense situations we deal with in a basketball game. Administrative bodies, officiating organizations like the Maine Principals Organization, regardless of the sport, recognize the importance of officials and coaches communicating. And coaches are probably the most important stakeholders in the game. There's a lot written into our rule set about this. Your ability to communicate in many states is part of the evaluation process to see if you can move on to the next level in the state tournament. Communicating with head coaches, we want to acknowledge, don't ignore them. Initially, we acknowledge verbally or non-verbally. Don't talk with the whistle in your mouth. Right? Wait to a dead ball period. Pull the whistle out. Talk to the coach. Whistle goes back in. Live ball, talking with a whistle in your mouth. Very unprofessional and very poor communications. Be a good listener. By listening, we might understand what the coach is actually trying to get across. And you know what? Sometimes, as I'm going to show you, they're actually right. And sometimes they just want to be heard. Be approachable. Don't, what? With the arms folded, the smirk on the face, the furrowed eyebrows. You're the professional in the game. You're the one who's running the game. Be approachable. There's nothing worse than walking into a restaurant, right? We've all done it, and having terrible service, a waiter or a waitress. It's a maddening experience. I don't care if it's McDonald's. I don't care if it's one of the top end restaurants on the waterfront in Portland, right? There's nothing worse than bad service. Remember, you are a service provider to the game you're officiating, so be approachable. Don't be the bad server. Appearing arrogant, aloof, it just creates barriers in communications. Now, spatial awareness, and I like to be in person to talk about spatial awareness, and you can only see my face, but how far or close, sometimes closer is better. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're not capable of it. We're going to give some examples later on here. Answering legitimate questions, not statements. Younger officials, newer officials. I said, if you get nothing tonight, I want you to look at mentoring. This is the other thing I want you to get. Answer the legitimate questions, not the statements. It's a no-win situation to try to answer a rhetorical question. You might want to acknowledge, but you don't have to answer them. So that's a travel. That is not an answerable statement. That's just, in many cases, nerves. In many cases, the passion for their team. That's not a travel. That's a travel. That does not get an answer. Now, if the coach says to you, how is my player traveling on that play? Or could you explain to me how the opponent is not traveling, lifting the pivot foot prior to releasing the ball for a dribble? Those are really good questions, but that's a travel. Does not need to be answered. Don't do it. Don't fall into it. And you need to be honest. If you missed it, admit it, but not 6 times a game, right? You can take the national championship, you could take the NBA, the WNBA finals, and you can look at plays that could go either way. And based on the ability of the official, the position of the official, the rules knowledge of the official, and then honestly, the official's decision making, if they missed it or not. So if you missed it, you be honest. Hopefully just not too often. There's 3 things you need to be able to say to a coach. I missed it. Again, not too often. You might be right. That's a big one to put in your arsenal. And then honestly, there are those calls that, you know right here, right? You know in your heart that you got it right. And if you made that ruling, coach, you know what? I feel pretty good about that one. Or some statement that fits in with your own personality. Those are 3 things you got to be able to say to a coach. But choose your words wisely. Never use profanity. You're the professional. Never make personal or derogatory comments, even if they do. Keep your tone unemotional. You are the professional. Sometimes they're baiting you. Sometimes coaches want technical fouls. They want to motivate their team. If they deserve a technical foul, we're going to rule and administer a technical foul, but don't take the bait. And sometimes if you don't know what to say, you might just shake your head and acknowledge. But remember this, silence can't be misquoted. So if you don't know what to say, maybe shake your head. Maybe it's just a thumbs up. I hear you, or okay. But I'm not going to say anything because maybe I don't know how to answer that. Maybe I don't know what to say. Maybe I'm a first, second, third year official, and I just don't have in my arsenal the things to say. Your communications with coaches, though, have to be brief, short, precise, rule-based, but not a dissertation. Well, coach, under Rule 2.10, the correctable errors say, blah, 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 blah. You don't need to cite chapter and verse. They're not going to like it. And when it's over. When coaches start to repeat themselves and don't have any more to say, coach, you're going to say, coach, I've heard what you had to say. I don't have anything to offer at this point. We're going to move on and get the game back in play. Get our partner or partners, and we're going to put the ball back in play. Now, let's take it to the court. Let's look at some examples. What coaches say. Let's take a look. What kind of call was that? How many people on this have ever heard that? I hope every hand goes up. I hope all 65 hands go up. That's a travel. We talked about that a little while ago. How can you call that from where you were? What did my player do wrong? Number 5, travels every single time. We saw it on film. We watched 17 hours of film this morning, and 5 travels every single time. Can you please watch the hand checking on number 3? That's an illegal screen on every single play. And you guys are just terrible homers, right? So I think most of you on the call with any kind of a refereeing experience have heard most of these questions, statements, things that coaches say. So let's break them down and let's look at some practical ways we might answer them or handle them from what we have in our rule set. So the first thing we always want to do is diffuse the situation if we can. And when we respond, as we've talked about, we want to use good tone, good body language, and good facial expressions. I can't repeat enough, don't respond to questions that don't need to be responded to. Sometimes it's just jittery nerves. I have an acquaintance that I started coaching when I started refereeing, number of state finals, and his armpits are completely soaked just walking out of the runway onto the court because he's just, and he probably asks, and not to embarrass or not too loud, 200 questions a night, of which you probably answer 10, because he is just such a nervous bag of bones and nerves when he gets going. He can't help himself. Is that a trouble? No, 3 seconds. And so you have some dialogue to try to calm him down, but there's many questions we just don't even respond to. Remember, it comes down to de-escalation. You need to be the de-escalator. And your first communications with people is important. We talked about walking in the gym, and also about how you greet the official. So here I am walking across the court at the Boston Garden, and this is a state final game. And the way I'm going to greet the coach is the way I greet the coach from the preseason scrimmage through the February 50-point blowout to the state finals. I walk up to them, and this works for me. I'm not saying do it like I do it, but I'd walk up and shake hands. Coach Nault, good luck. Our crew is going to work really hard tonight. That was always my shtick. And I thought that was short, sweet, and professional. Not like, hey, Ricky, how you been? She's great run. Huh? 5 in a row. You could win the state championship. Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm with Keno tonight. I'm with TJ, and this is going to be fun. And we're going to have just very professional. And I called him by his last name. Coach Nault, good luck. We're going to work real hard tonight. 4.2 seconds it took me to get that out. Then when I walk down the other end of the court, I'm going to say, Coach Dobles, good luck. We're going to work real hard tonight. And I did that every single game. I'm not telling you to do it, but I want you to find something in your own personality that fits with you. But I felt it was going to be professional. I was going to call them by their last name. I was going to let them know we were going to work hard tonight. Because we're going to work hard tonight. How can you argue with that? As long as you then go out and work hard that night. And if it's your first time officiating the team, I'm probably going to talk to my crew and say, hey, TJ, first time with Callis. What do I need to know? I've never had the coach from Callis. Is he tough? What are we in for? Oh, Raph, we're in for a treat tonight. He's just a bundle of nerves, a lot of questions, or wonderful coach, says something where we better look at it. We probably missed it. So I want to know that going in if I've never had a team before or a coach before. She refed the Division I Women's NCAA Championship game a number of years ago, and she assigns the Northeast 10, which plays Division II women's and women's coaches. And I like this poll because it shows their concerns for us as communicators. So they want a response. They don't like being ignored. They know they're nuts. They know they're crazy, passionate, insane about their teams, 40 hours a week with their teams. They want to be disarmed. And they dislike the straight arm. So there's the straight arm. I think that's one of the officials from Maine. And so you get to do the straight arm one time a game. That means stop. And very professionally, you might say, Coach, I've heard you. That's enough of this behavior. Any further may, not will, may result in a technical foul. So one of the things that was brought up specifically, and this is very interesting, half the in the women's Northeast 10, half the coaches are male, half the coaches are female. This is not my words, so please don't shoot the messenger, but be aware the perception female coaches think their male counterparts get away with more. Male coaches think their female counterparts get away with more. And so they all want to be treated equal. Again, they are all looking for an advantage, and they're all paranoid to an extent because you have come into their family and you're going to disrupt their 32 minutes. So just be aware you want to have equal communication at either end of the floor. Very, very important thing. Whatever level you're on, make sure it's fair and equal. So rhetorical questions. Let's look at the question we talked about. What kind of call was that? Or that's a travel. Probably not a response needed. They want to be heard, hear them, be respectful, but it's your job to make sure they stay in the lines. If they're telling you that's a travel for the first 137 possessions of the game, you've probably let it get too far, and you probably need, it might just be a whisper during a dead ball. I hear your concerns about traveling. We don't see it. I've heard what you're saying, and I think that's sufficient rhetoric about traveling. Something to that effect. Whatever it works in your personality, just make sure it's professional. Not, coach, enough with the travel, right? Is that going to be a good response? Is that something we would expect as good service? Probably not. All right, trying to gain an advantage. Can you watch Hey, Raph, if you watch number 5, he travels every time. We saw it on film. I watched 27 hours of film this morning, 27, and he travels every single time. How do you respond to that, right? Very simple. Coach, traveling is a point of emphasis, and we're going to watch it real closely, and we're going to rule it properly on both teams. How can you argue with that? It's quick, it's rule-based, it's fair. We've addressed the concerns, and we've moved on. Trying to gain an advantage. Can you please watch number 3 for hand checking? Coach, it really looked legal guarding to me at my angle, but we'll watch it closely. So you've acknowledged, you've answered their question, you've answered their fears, and you're professionally say, yep, you know what? Going forward, we're going to look at that. How can a coach argue with that answer? They can, but that's the next level. That's an illegal screen on every single play, right? Real animated coach, very upset. Every single play. Here's a great answer. Coach, which number is setting the illegal screen? I can remember being down in New York City doing a game, and this coach I had never had the coach. He was from Philadelphia, and he came out and just, and that was one of the first things. Every single play, they're setting an illegal screen. I said, and this is during a free throw. Coach, do you have a number? I'll be happy to watch it. Do you have a number? No, I don't have a number. Is it on every single play, coach? No, it's not on every single play. And then he just kind of smiled and moved on. And then, you know what? We never heard from him again the whole game. But all I did was communicate. I was sincere. I answered his question, and I communicated. So I'm not telling you to go out in your next game and say which number, but which number is a good tool if you think in your personality you can fit it into your holster, your tool belt. I like to think of having responses as a tool belt or a gun holster, right? With bullets in a gun holster or a hammer, a screwdriver, a pair of pliers. So if you have these responses canned and you've maybe practiced them in the summer league or practiced them during scrimmages, when it gets into regular season, and I hope for many of you postseason, you can have those in your tool pouch. And when somebody says on every play, you can say, Coach, do you have a number for me? That 1.2 second answer, you've done everything you should in the realm of communications, and the coach knows it. All right. Then there's the crossing the line. This coach, you guys are just terrible homers, right? This is questioning your integrity. This is embarrassing you. We do not pass go. We do not collect 200, to coin the phrase of Monopoly, right? we are going to go right to technical foul. All right. That the rules support you on this. I know in Maine you'd be supported from IBO. I know you'd be supported from the Maine Principals Association. This type of behavior, clearly not acceptable for a coach. This is not the example we want to set for student athletes by questioning our integrity or using profanity. I've not put the profanity in here, but you know it when you hear it. So again, trying to gain an advantage. Where did you come up with? Let's look at some things we can put in our tool belt. Where did you come up with that one, Ref? Rule 2.3, coach. I don't tell people to memorize rule numbers, but rule 2.3 is one of my favorite to memorize. And if we're in person, I'd ask you what rule 2.3 is. Everything not covered under the rules is under the jurisdiction of the referee. Well, they don't know who the referee, the umpire one, umpire two is anyway. So you just come out with rule 2.3 and they go, wow, TJ really knows the rules. He's quoting chapter and verse as if it was a biblical reference. So again, that is something that worked in my arsenal. Rule 2.3. Where did you come up with that one? And it would usually leave them scratching their head and saying, oh, he really knows the rules. Maybe there is a rule 2.3. All right. But things like that. Find your own thing that works for you, that's professional, succinct, rule-based. Where did you come up with that one, Ref? It's a master's level response. Only what I like to call it windshield time or logging hours in a game are going to get you those responses. And as I go back to slide number 1, finding a mentor who knows you and knows your personality can help you find those responses. Develop your own arsenal. So some tips on effective communication. All people want to be treated with dignity and respect. I go back to the restaurant situation. Some of the worst situations you may ever have was a terrible waiter or waitress in a restaurant who did not treat you with dignity or respect. Treat people the way you want to be treated. All people want to be asked instead of being told, right? So a coach jumps off the bench, is very animated. Coach, you sit down or I'm going to hit you with a technical foul. Or you could say, Coach, I've heard your fears. Could you please sit down? Or we may have to escalate this to a technical foul. How would you rather be addressed? Tell me, if it was you coaching, which one you'd rather have. And I think I know the answer to that. All people want to know why they're being asked or ordered to do something. I'll give you a great example. A team I had, we used to throw up the jump ball, they'd tap it, and then all 12 players would stand up and they'd start clapping and cheering, which personally I think is pretty cool. However, the rule set is very, very clear at all levels. And it says there's going to be one person standing, and he or she is going to be the head coach. And that's all we're going to address. So I could have gone over to the head coach and said, sit everybody down. Or I could say, Coach, it's a rule and we need to enforce it as written. I'm telling him right up front why I'm asking him to do something. And I'm giving the rules based. Usually the answer is it's a rule. And again, all people want to be given options instead of threats. That's very easy. I'm going to hit you with a T. You do that again. Coach, do you think we could work together so we could avoid a technical foul? The choice is within your personality. Please don't use my personality. Don't use Julie's. Don't use TJ's. Work within your own personality and find a mentor to develop that. And all people want a second chance to correct their mistakes. And we're going to talk about second chances with warnings, because I think it's the most underutilized piece of officiating. It's in the rule set. And I look at game after game after game after game after game that I observe and watch film on. And I say, oh, there's a perfect opportunity for a warning, and it never gets used. So warnings. The warning for behavior, head coach or bench personnel, is an administrative action that you as the official are going to initiate, and it should be documented in the scorebook, and the coach should be informed. So unless the offense is deemed major, the official must issue a warning. There it is in blue, must issue a warning. I'd say that must for that behavior, in my opinion, maybe happens 15% of the time, maybe. I'm going to go back prior to to this rule being put in our IBO manual. It's 18.4C, but many experienced coaches used to blow the whistle. Toot. That's a warning against Coach White. Please log that in the book. Now, that was not a rule, but there were very senior officials that would do that, even though the rules did not support you. Then the rule, I think maybe 9 or 10 years ago, we got the warning. And then all of a sudden we became afraid to use it. But if a coach addresses an official in a disrespectful manner, they try to influence an official's ruling, they're gesturing, stomping, throwing the hands up, ripping the jacket off. Those are all things that we must issue a warning for. And I don't think we do it enough. So unless the offense is major, like we use this in class, you bleeping whatever, we're going to skip over the warning. We're going to go directly to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect 200. And we're going to issue and rule a technical foul. That's on a major offense. But if it's not a major offense, we're going to issue the warning to the head coach or the bench personnel. Again, disrespectfully or trying to irk or taunt. Provoking undesirable, 2 good ones. And again, the coaching box under that same warning, if the first offense is considered major, no warning should be given. I'll give you an example of a game I observed a few years ago. Very experienced high school official standing at center court, and he's calling a foul on a young lady and says, a young man, sorry, 2 blue, push. And as he turns around, the head coach is stomping and yelling and spitting and just unglued in the center restraining circle where the official is reporting the foul. That is not a warning. That is egregious. Skip over the warning and go directly to the technical foul. Now, if the coach, we could analyze this question here. We could do an interesting, you make the ruling. Is this egregious? Is the coach in or out? We're taking 1/10 of a second slice of film here. This may be egregious, may not. We need to look at the game itself. But again, you've given the warning. If you want to stop that behavior, the rules support you with the warning. You should be issuing it. And a direct technical foul is charged to the head coach or bench personnel if it's considered egregious. If the warning is given, make sure it's put in the scorebook. Make sure that both head coaches know. And I think most importantly, your other partner or partners should know. Because what we don't want to have is 3 warnings. We don't want to have warning, Coach Green, behavior. And then your partners don't know what you've ruled. They don't know there's a warning in the book, and all of a sudden they come around and warn, and all of a sudden we get 3 warnings. There is but one for this particular rule. A second unsporting act beyond that, or the bench personnel, results in a technical foul charged to the offender. If the offender is bench personnel, we also get the wonderful math of 2 is 2, but 3 is 3, and 1 and 2 and 3, okay, with indirect technical fouls towards the head coach. So in the second quarter, the head coach addresses the official disrespectfully. He or she we're going to pass go. Do not collect 200. We have now had a warning. We have had another infraction. We are going to rule a technical foul and assess that to the assistant and indirectly towards the coach. Remember, in all of this communication, whatever we're saying, whatever we're doing, and I look at this young lady here, I have no idea what state. I don't know what level she's officiating, but I can tell you this: her posture, her facial expression, her hand gestures, she's engaged, she's explaining, she cares, and she's being respectful doing it. So the global message: respect, understanding, and forgiveness. I don't care if it's basketball, volleyball, swimming, your local barista, the toll takers on the Maine Turnpike, right? Respect, understanding, forgiveness. We've talked about things to say. I think more importantly than the things we say are some things not to say and not to do. So let's look at them. Don't call coaches by their first name. This is one of my pet peeves. You may feel different and it may be different in your area, but if I were going to referee a game tonight, TJ Halliday was coaching. Again, I come over, Coach Halliday, good luck. We're going to work hard tonight. For the rest of that game, my friend TJ would be coach, or Coach TJ, or Coach Halliday, or simply coach, because I am the professional and I'm going to treat my duties and I'm going to treat this game as a professional. Whether it was the sixth grade game or whether it was the state finals, that's how I would act. Don't escalate when talking to the coach. When they talk louder, it's a tendency, especially in society today. We've got a very divided nation in many respects. I talk loud and you talk louder and I talk louder, and pretty soon we're at 107 decibels and nobody wins. We just, hey, I won this. I'm hoarse because I won the screaming match, right? So you're the professional. When the coach escalates, that's when you want to be your calmest and de-escalate the coach. Don't just walk away. And I like to, again, do this in person. We don't want to give the or talk to the hand and flip the hair. And I don't have the hair to do it, but flip the hair and turn around, right? Again, remember body language, facial expression, be the professional. And don't put the hand up, talk to the hand. Talked about body language. If you're going to end the conversation, coach, I've heard your concerns. We're going to have to move on with the game now. Don't lecture the coach on the rules. You might be the rules expert. You're lucky to have a number of rules experts in Maine. People writing the rules in Maine, but don't lecture the coach on the rules. Just say, hey, the rule is boom. A quick paraphrase, not number and chapter and verse. You're just going to irritate them. Don't lecture the coach and tell them that they're wrong and this is the way it happened. That is a surefire way to lose. That was a block. No, it wasn't. It was a charge. It was a block, a charge, a block, a charge, right? And pretty soon you get a Broadway play going. That's a block. That's a charge, right? And everybody's watching the Broadway play. You're probably never going to change their mind. So, I said earlier, coach, film's not going to lie. I might have missed it. I felt pretty good about it from my angle. This is what I saw. Those are the ways you're going to answer. Not, nope, you're wrong. That's a surefire way to lose. One thing is, do not put your arm around a coach to give an explanation. Do not make physical contact. Now, many times in a free throw, they're going to come up to you and say, oh, Raf, what were you and TJ thinking on that last call? I don't know. What were you thinking? I got my arm around you, buddy. Buddy, what were you thinking, buddy? What were you thinking? And I'm just going to stand there very professionally, and I'm not going to put my arm around the coach. The only time we're going to touch is to shake hands prior to the game. Now, this might be a little strange for you, but when the coach hugs me and puts their arm around me, the next chance I get at the other end during dead ball, usually a free throw, when I'm in front of the coach, I say, Coach Higgins back here, hug me. If you want to hug me this time, I'll be all right with that. Now, usually that coach runs to the other end of the bench and leaves you alone for the entire night. You'll never hear from them again. You may never referee their games again, but I'm making a little bit of fun there, but they're always watching. You're always being watched. It may not be the head coach, but it may be one of the 7 assistants. We're all wearing the Adidas shirts that are the same color with the embroidery, right? They're watching you. So if there's contact with the coach putting the arm around you, patting you on the shoulder at this end, within your own personality, you may have to address it somehow at the other end. Don't be defensive or arrogant. Again, coaches are right sometimes. I can remember having a college semifinal, and there was a call I was so sure on. I was so sure. I was so sure. And the coach went nuts, and I'd had the coach many, many, many times. And I said, "Oh, he's just mad because the game's slipping away here, and he's going to lose." And I just said, "Nick, hey, I feel really good about that. I know, no, and I probably pushed it harder than I should have. I got into the locker room, pulled out my phone, looked at the film, and went, because the film was the 180-degree opposite of where I was standing. And the coach was so right. I mean, it just so right that it was an abysmal ruling on my part. So remember, the more defensive and arrogant you get, you could fall into that trap where you were really incorrect in your ruling, and you've now lost a lot of credibility. I can't emphasize enough. If it's a comment that's not derogatory, just let it go. If it's derogatory, if it's profanity, sexual, or racist in nature, every assigner is going to back you. So if there's a comment of that nature, you're going to penalize that with a ruling of a technical foul. If not, if it's innocuous, you know, statements that are not meant to defame you, not meant to insult you, we're just going to move on. Remember, how you communicate with coaches, players, and bench personnel is vital to keeping the game under control. When things get unglued is when you need to be the professional the most, right? So, we see them yucking it up on the conversation to our left here. That's it can be a very slippery slope there of touching, and we may be too intimate in our communication because coach the other end feels it's unfair. We've got in the center photo here, we've got a dead ball situation potentially coming up. We can allay whatever the coach's question or fears are. And on the slide to the right, we're making a travel ruling. Coach is obviously not happy about it, but we're not going to react in a way that's defiant or angry. We're going to keep it under control. You are the professional. You are under control. And remember, you are always being watched. I cannot emphasize that enough. You as an assigner, I cannot believe the amount of film I get from, from the freshman parents, from, the assistant custodian in the gym. It's just amazing, the people that have vested interest in their schools and film it. And you are always, from the time you walk in the gym, the time you leave, being watched. You're the professional. You need to communicate as such. To get respect, you got to give respect. It doesn't mean you roll over. It doesn't mean you take abuse. It doesn't mean you allow yourself to be spoken to derogatorily. But getting respect is giving respect to the players, coaches, table officials, and the administrators and stakeholders of the game. You've got to be the professional. You've got to be approachable. You've got to be the calmest when everything turns to chaos. And what I like to say, I quote John Adams, who was from the NCAA a number of years ago, is, Ralph, how can I move up? How can I get a state tournament game? How can I get a state tournament final? How can I get whatever? And I always say, manage major moments. So when you feel you can handle all the major moments of the 7th and 8th grade travel games, it's probably time for you to do the freshman and JV games. And when you can handle all of those major moments, it's probably time for you to get the varsity level. And when you feel you can be the referee in the varsity game, then it's probably time for you to hopefully get some state tournament assignments. But what are managed major moments? I'll give you some of mine. When the shot clock catches on fire, what are you going to do? Okay. When the game clock gets unplugged and slammed onto the ground because the clock operator is an angry fan, what are you going to do? When the mascot comes running out onto the floor in the middle of live play on a Friday Night Lights high school game, what are you going to do? When you have a player dunk and 6 or 7 of his friends run out to center court and celebrate. What are you going to do? When you have the head coach take the official book of the game and throw it out the window, what are you going to do? Now, we're not going to answer those questions tonight, but those are things that all happened in my games. Many of you on the phone probably have 5, 6, 7 different stories of things that happen in your games. And when you can handle those as a professional with rules-based answers and manage the chaos around you, then it's probably time for you to move on to the next level because you've managed those major moments. So I am rounding down close to the top of the hour. We can go, I think we have this channel till 11 o'clock, and then your local news is coming in after that. But if there are any questions, if you
Oh,
shoot them to TJ, and he's probably monitoring the chat right now, I'll be happy to answer them.
well, first of all, John, that was excellent. There's a reason I had you on this presentation because every official in the state of Maine needs to hear the content. I thought it was
Thank you.
spot on.
Thank you.
You use rules-based examples, and this is the standard that IBO demands, and it's the standard the state of Maine demands. And we greatly appreciate what you did. I do
Well, I
have some
greatly
questions
appreciate
for you.
being on. Thank you.
Why is it so important you only use the coach's last name?
It's important to me. It may not be important to you. To me, it was always um, I'm letting them know this is a professional situation. So I'm going to give an example of buying a car.
Mhm.
And this may have changed a little since COVID, but you go buy a $50,000 automobile and I'm the salesman. Oh, Mr. Halliday, welcome here to Portland Chevrolet. It's wonderful to have you. Mr. Halliday, I'd like to show you this 1500 truck, right? It's a formal, a $50,000 vehicle. Now, a $90 basketball game might not be as formal, but you know what? To those players and coaches, that Tuesday, Friday night game is everything. So for me, it was always use the last name. If that doesn't fit in your personality, I'm okay with that. I would recommend coach because as we become, you know, to the first name, hey Johnny, hey old TJ, right? Familiarity breeds a little bit of contempt. So even though they're your best friend, they're a member of your board, and you see them at meetings, and you see them at the local watering hole, and you play golf with them. The 32 minutes of that game, I want to let them know I'm a professional. Again, that's what works for me.
Yeah.
Maybe a little different for you. Find whatever it is, find your way to let them know you're the professional.
No, that's the main standard right there. We don't want them using coaches' first names. We want to name professional. We don't want to show any kind of favoritism. And using the term coach is universal. And if you
Yeah,
use it every time, you're being fair to both teams. You're being
right.
fair to that communication.
Right. And coach, honestly, there are going to be times, it might be for you younger, newer officials, it might be the worst games there are to officiate. And that's the hungover dads
Mm-hmm.
on third, fourth, fifth grade Saturday morning, first year officials, right? And you've got no security in the gym, no athletic director. The custodian opens the door and says, I'm heading to Dunkin' Donuts. Good luck. Lock up when you're done, right? And at that point, you're not probably going to know the coach's name. There's no website. There's barely a book at that point. And so, as TJ said, coach is universal. Just say coach, and it's fair for both teams.
Do you have empathy for coaches, and how does it impact your approach to communication?
That's a really good question. I'm an empathetic person, and so the best thing you can do, I think, is put yourself in the shoes of the coach. And you've got seconds to do this in your brain, but okay, I just made a ruling, and block charge is the big one, right? Because when you make a block charge call, 50% of the auditorium stands up and cheers you, and 50% wants to throw tomatoes at you. Okay. And that's just the nature of that call, right? It becomes a marquee ruling, and it becomes an emotional ruling. So you've got to you got to put yourself immediately in the coach's shoes. If I was coaching and I made that ruling with a minute and 37 seconds left in the game, or that ruling was made against me, a minute and 37 seconds left in the game, how would I feel? So if you can put yourself into the coach's shoes, understand their perspective, understand where they're coming from, and base your response based on how you would want to be responded to, I think that goes a long way in good communication. Now, if the coach says, TJ, that was bleepity bleep and bleep, bleep and blah, right? All the empathy goes out the window
Hmm.
because there's a level of respect and professionalism that they need to exude. And that they have to understand that you are the arbiter of the game. And at this point, you are in charge of the game. You've done it in a respectful fashion. Um, and a ruling of a technical foul is going to happen at that point. And then the coach would say, Raf, how could you hit me a tee with that? Coach, I treat you with respect. I expect the same in return, right? Very, very simple. So I'm going to have empathy and I'm going to rule with the empathy, but I also realize that respect is a two-way street. I hope that answers the question.
Excellent, excellent. Tell me how you handle a situation in pregame before you're even on the court. You're in your street clothes. You came in and you get a few minutes of the JV game, and a coach approaches you in the on the gym area, and you're in public and you can be seen. How are you going to handle that situation? A coach approaches you.
And that happens all the time. And for varsity officials, I beg, 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 beg you as an assigner. I beg you as an assigner to watch the JV officials because they deserve it. And I can't tell you the number of officials that I've been able to assign because a TJ would come to me and say, "Hey, I was at I was at Westbrook High the other night and I watched so and so, and he or she can really officiate. You should give him a shot." That's the best feedback I can ever get on an official. So
Mm,
starting with, I beg you to watch the sub-varsity games if you can. Um, Now, when the coach walks up, unfortunately, it's time to skedaddle and go to the locker room. And I'd go, "Hey, coach, good to see you. You know, should be a fun ride tonight. Have a great game." And I'm moving on. And I hope to, at that point, see the other coach who's probably 6 rows up in the stands. And I'm going to walk up to that coach and say the exact same thing. Now, it's funny you should ask this question in Maine because a very, very, very close friend of mine refereed the second half of a college doubleheader at Maine Maritime, one of the finest institutions and one of the longest rides you'll ever have.
mhm.
And so this gentleman, a very seasoned official, worked the NCAA tournament, very smart guy, and he decided to sit in the stands. And the coach of his game walked up to him and started talking to him. And they talked for about 7 minutes. Lo and behold, somebody weeks later from another team is watching that game. And what do you think that coach's eyes are drawn to?
Mm.
Hey, why is Raf sitting in the stands with so and so for 7 minutes and 13 seconds talking about Wendy's Baconator, French fries, vacations, and whatever? So again, you're always being watched. Equal, quick, to the point. Unfortunately, if that means you can't watch the JV game, get your bag, get to your locker room, and start the stretch.
Very good. Last question I have for you is why is the warning underutilized and what can we do to improve that aspect of our game?
So I bet you, based on your leadership in Maine, you probably have the warning utilized more than in other states. That's my feeling. I have nothing, I have absolutely no data to back that up other than
Mm,
feeling. Why do I think it's underutilized? Well, I think for officials with less than 10 years, I start to see it more. And I think it was maybe 9, 10 years ago that we put that in. I don't know why, but officials prior to that, um, just I just never seem to gravitate to it. Now the
mm,
rule says you must warn,
mhm,
and then we don't do it, and I don't know why because it does it doesn't cost us anything. It's like making
mm.
I use the old payphone analogies, but it's like making a free call. It's an 800 phone call from a payphone. We don't use it. I think that might begin in our pregame conversation.
Okay.
We're going to say, hey, we got two teams tonight. I always like to talk about the particular uh, pros and cons of team. Hey, they run full court press all night. They make a lot of hand contact. This coach is very animated. This coach pays particular attention to delay a game. This coach is going to use all their timeouts early. And you know what? This coach steps out of the coaching box on a regular basis. We need to use the warning. So to me, we should be addressing this in our pregame conference. It's one of the things that I always used in my pregame conference. I don't in the summer that I sit in on, it never gets mentioned. I think that's where it all begins for me.
Yeah, very good. Well, a couple of key things I think tonight. First and foremost, I think one of the things that jumps out to me is communication is a learned skill. I don't know all the experience here on tonight's call, but if you've been officiating a number of years, hopefully this is something you're evolving over time. I really like the fact that when you do have interactions, your goal with coaches is to acknowledge and clarify and summarize. You're at least acknowledging and you're showing them that you've heard them. I think that's vitally important. I know as a state assigner of the postseason, it absolutely breaks our heart when we can't use somebody in a certain game because we see a block on their schedule. And 9 times out of 10, when you see those blocks, coaches and ADs are always talking about these personality conflicts. We'd like to do whatever we can to make sure those personality conflicts don't exist. And I think this open communication does as well. When you take a look at the folks that do state championship games, not only do they have excellent mechanics, excellent signaling, but almost all of them have supremely good communication skills and can diffuse. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. John, that was outstanding. Any closing comments?
Yeah, I want to leave you with one thing tonight. And I want you to be as we come into the season, it's so exciting. The preseason uh tap off tournaments are going to start to happen at the lower levels, work their way up to high school. We're going to get into scrimmages. We're going to get into high school games. It's a really exciting time of year in the officiating community. I want you to work on one thing rules-based wise this year that you're lacking in. I don't know what that is because I don't know everybody on this call, but whatever you're lacking in, I want you to work on that right out of the gate in scrimmages and preseason. And then the other thing that I want you all to work on is being a really good partner. And being a really good partner, I want you to show up ready to referee. I want you to show up with rules-based knowledge. I want you to show up with some water or some Gatorade or some apples or in Maine, some blueberries maybe. All right. I want you to show up ready with questions or problem plays to discuss. I mean, we've got thousands and thousands and thousands of video plays. We got RefQuest. We got more information we can possibly use, but I want you to show up ready to talk about it. I want you to show up ready to have a good pregame. Be bright, be positive, be happy to be there, be a good partner. If you can do that, I promise you it's going to set the stage for good communication and a good game. I hope you have a healthy, blessed, and happy season. And I hope to see many of you along the way. And I'm very grateful and humbled with all that Maine puts into the game of high school basketball to be a very small part of it in this presentation. So thank you all for bearing with me on a Sunday night, and I hope you have a wonderful, healthy, and happy season.
Awesome. I want to thank you. I want to thank all that's on this call. We greatly appreciate your commitment to high school basketball. Good night. And we hope to see you at the state clinics coming up starting next week. We'll be traveling around the state and making sure you get those new rules and mechanics covered for the upcoming season. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, everybody. Be safe.